Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. You're on the record. I'm actually in Napier, New Zealand, leaving after a tremendous week-long fact-finding mission with $1 billion of economic impact, a lot of golf, 5 million people in the country, but tourism is carrying the day, along with rugby, basketball, even American football and other sports. But let's not lose the sight of the tremendous foresight that we all have heading to 2028 and the LA Summer Olympics. Even Oklahoma City has a part with a small number of events. We're going to let David Holt talk about that. The mayor of Oklahoma City, by the way, 45 years old today, but he was elected with about 78% of the vote in 2018, the largest election win of any American mayor in a long time, the youngest Oklahoma City mayor in 100 years, the city's first Native American mayor with part Osage blood in his lineage, the 38th mayor of Oklahoma City. But more than that, I was lucky enough to be involved in the original MAPS plan, which was done many years ago, and the bottom line is it's led to an NBA franchise, many facilities, over $5 billion of downtown economic development, and an identity in a city that frankly didn't have that identity when it lost various industrial development projects to other cities in the country. Credit Ron Norick, credit Mick Cornett, the next mayor, certainly credit David Holt, who, by the way, also is the incoming president of the United States Conference of Mayors. So look for some really fun things to be happening in his tenure over the next few years. I'm lucky enough to have part of the opportunity to announce that as well. So I give you, without further ado, heading into Oklahoma City's golden era, and now led ably by Mayor David Holt. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Icons deals with diverse individuals, captains of industry, captains of sports, captains of politics. This is just my captain, David Holt, the incredible, most popular mayor in the history of Oklahoma City. And I've got a couple of stories to tell. He is humble, so most of the stuff that I start with, he's going to deny, but it's all true, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor Holt, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Rick. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we got a lot to cover, and we're going to start with young David Holt. So born and raised in Oklahoma City, son of a teacher, social worker, family in Oklahoma City for the better part of a century, the Putnam City Public Schools, obviously National Merit Scholar. We'd expect nothing else.
Sure.
GW, of course, GWBA, and then Oklahoma City University. So March 10, 1979, when did the Holt family, after that immediate birth, know that they had created someone astronomically special?
You don't know. You're interviewing the wrong person to answer that question. But I have always been interested in service. I've always been running for student council. I've always been doing all those things. I went to GW in DC, got a degree in political science. I worked in politics. And, look, I was even conscious at the age of 14 of what was happening in my community that you were very intimately involved in. Your viewers may not know that part of your history, but I think it's pretty important to you, and it's certainly very important to Oklahoma City. But you were kind of the main consultant on our initial step towards revitalization in 1993 when we passed MAPS, Metropolitan Area Projects, which included multiple sports projects, including the arena that the Thunder now play in and the ballpark that our AAA baseball team plays in, and a river that ultimately has become an Olympic training facility. So you were intimately a part of all of that here in Oklahoma City. So you're well remembered here. I was following all of that, of course, and was amazingly honored to get to be a participant in the continuation of that renaissance as an adult. I became chief of staff to Mayor Cornett, my predecessor, and then I got elected mayor in 2018. But when my family figured out that I was on that path, I don't know. That would be for them to say, but hopefully they're proud of me.
That's they're proud of you, and that's a purely metaphorical question. And we're gonna have a close up of this, but that's the I have many sets of memorabilia around the house. The "Believe in Our Future" yard sign, which by the way makes me feel old. I know I'm about 20 some odd years older than you are, but the 14 you were referring to, and Ron Norick and I kid about it. You put up yard signs for our deal, and here we are talking about maps four and the next set of maps. So I'm honored that you're honored, and it's an incredible tradition. I'll just start, and this is about you, but Oklahoma City is an incredible community beyond any other in the country. The legacy of mayors, the belief in the future. Maps has become like Kleenex and Band-Aids. When people say maps in Oklahoma City, it is a special significance. Now you're carrying the torch as the incoming chairman of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and there'll be a lot of that in this interview. But I just wanted to start by saying I'm touched and honored that you remembered that at 14 I was old and now getting older. Thank you, thank you very very much for that. When did you decide that long-term office holding would be your priority versus becoming a full-time lawyer?
Hmm. Well, I did go to law school at night when I was chief of staff to Mayor Cornett. And so I have a law degree from OCU, Oklahoma City University School of Law. And I am actually now, I am now the dean of the law
Yeah.
school. I'm actually speaking to you right now, not from City Hall, but from the law school. So I wear two hats, which is, it's a lot, but I've got a lot of energy and good time management skills. But even a lot of big city mayors, more than you may realize, sort of have to play double duty, especially kind of in the Southwest. That's often the form of government that we have. But um, what was the question again, Rick? What?
The question was, how's your memory?
Oh yeah.
No,
Oh, you
no.
were asking. Look, I have always thought for some time that I would seek public office. And that was your
Yeah,
question.
there
It's
you go.
like when would I run?
That was yeah,
And
yeah. Thank.
so, but I wasn't. I didn't want to rush it. I saw people who would run in their 20s and would lose, and it just seemed like you wanted to do it at the right time when everybody else thought it was a good idea, and you wanted to get a little seasoning. So I was so glad that I could have that opportunity in my 20s to be the chief of staff to the mayor, and that was sort of how I got a little bit of seasoning and some political experience, and went to law school at that time as well. And then it wasn't until I was about 30 when I was elected for the first time, and I got elected to the Oklahoma State Senate, and I was representing a part of Oklahoma City, kind of where I had grown up, sort of that Putnam City Schools area that you referenced earlier. And I served there for 8 years, and that's where I was when I was elected mayor 6 years ago now. So I guess I've been in office for 14 years, and yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to serve, and I tell people that you don't have to run for office to serve the public and to make the world a better place. But that's just the way. That's the path I have found best suits my talents.
Well, and our relationship will allow me to say this, and I hope it makes it on it that the remaining questions, I'll go a little slower and I'll repeat them just in case you have any
Yeah,
any
please.
issues as
Thank
far
you.
as
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So, as you refer to seasoning, and the seasoning is humble because the seasoning is among the best and the most amazing in the business. You weren't chief of staff for Ron Norick, but Ron kind of built maps, and he's a book contributor and an amazing friend. And then Mick Cornett, you had Kirk Humphreys for a little while, but the legacy of Norick to Cornett to Holt has been incredible. What makes Oklahoma City so special that that kind of succession can work so dramatically well in a Midwestern city?
Well, great question because it is unique, and I see other cities admire it because oftentimes it seems like each mayor is just trying to do the opposite of the last mayor in other
Right,
cities. Like it's
right.
like it's a it's just a pendulum that swings back and forth. But here in Oklahoma City, it has been much more like a relay race. We are passing the baton to the next mayor, and our vision has stayed very constant. And I don't know. I mean, I guess, it seems to me that each of us that has followed Mayor Norick has recognized that why would we mess with what, a philosophy that is working? We can find ways to improve upon it and expand it. And, we certainly are always thinking about what's the next big thing. But the idea of just completely changing course just obviously has been illogical to each of us. And I hope that remains the case for some time. But yeah, I think the continuity that we've enjoyed now for 3 decades has been important. I think we have a unique political culture, and I cultivate that very intentionally. And I feel like I talk about how we do things as much as
Yeah.
I talk about what we're going to do. Because we're in sort of this divisive, national political climate. But here in Oklahoma City, where we're about 50-50, if you were to look at, political registration of Republicans and Democrats, but we're passing things, with 70% of the vote time and time
Yeah.
again. And I'm getting elected by those similar margins. So you've got like this consensus of people that obviously cuts across partisan lines. So I think that's part of our secret sauce is a unique political culture that sets aside the things that divides us and finds common purpose. But we are definitely on a mission, and I feel like that's one of the things I say about our community is we're kind of like the most mission-focused city in the United States, and that obviously starts with the top, and you got to have a mayor who is leading the charge, but you've got obviously a willing electorate here who has seen this progress, who has seen this momentum, and wants to keep it going. And you mentioned I was born in 1979, and just one reflection of this success is that in 1950, not 1959, 1979, in 1979, when I was born, we were the 37th largest city in the United States, and today we're the 20th largest city. And you don't make that kind of
Yeah.
movement in the rankings, especially in the top 50, unless you like discover gold or something. But we have been dynamic, we have been growing, and a lot of it goes back to your work with maps. But yeah, it's my duty, obligation, and honor to continue that legacy and to build upon it.
You discovered something more important than gold. You discovered economic impact and the catalyst, the ability to generate change internally. When you think of the kind of Norick Cornett Holt trilogy, and then you think about all of the issues relative to what's in common, uh, preparation, persuasion, ability, humility, intelligence. Uh, I know why they were so popular. Is that why you're so popular?
Again, I think you're asking the wrong person but yeah, I mean, I just think that yeah, my key to keeping this momentum going and fulfilling the role that I'm called upon to fill builds upon many of the things we already discussed. But it's we've got to have a leader who is bringing us together, who is not dividing us, and who is thinking about the next big thing. That is one of the things that this community has clearly become known for is that we're always sort of relentlessly looking for the next big thing. I came into office and we passed a $1.1 billion initiative, MAPS 4, the fourth iteration of this MAP story that we've been talking about. But we didn't rest on our laurels. We had to get through the pandemic. That was sort of the next big challenge that we didn't, obviously foresee. But once we got past that, then we were talking about how are we going to keep the thunder? How are we going to keep Major League Professional Sports for another generation? So then we had $1 billion vote on a new arena, which passed with 70% of the vote. And, we're talking now about, what are we going to do for transit? Are we going to have a major transit initiative in this community? What are we going to do, in regards to core infrastructure? I mean, whatever the
Right.
case, we never sort of sit back and relax, and I think that's my role. And that's what I try to do is make sure that, because nobody else can do that but the mayor, make sure that I am pushing us on to the next big thing every year.
Well, when you came into office and Maps 4 was a quick success, but it built on the past, as we said, you talk about support your goals, and they've been consistent supporting and improving public education, diversity, quality of life, parentheses, maps, and the core services, which every mayor does. But the key from me and the show is the intersection of sports, politics, business, and community. You've kind of refined that brand into a science. It took a whole partnership to do, but kudos. Talk about that.
Well, I feel like the most notable example of what you're talking about, obviously, is Oklahoma City's relationship with Major League Professional Sports, most
Right.
specifically the NBA. So, you and Mayor Norick worked together to make sure we had an arena that an NBA team or an NHL team could play in. Before 1993, that just didn't even exist. I mean, it wouldn't have been an
Right.
option. So you took sort of a if you build it, they will come approach. And we got that arena open. It's been now about 22 years since that arena opened. And
By the way, it doesn't look old anymore. It doesn't look old anymore.
yeah,
I know you got the deal passed, so you could say it. You're not going to say it, but it doesn't. It's now people look at it and say, all right, it's a stepping stone to the next one,
yeah,
which is great.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
so what we recognized when we finally got that opportunity, and it came via a crazy story that we could probably fill a whole show talking about. But the Hornets came here due to Hurricane
yeah,
Katrina, so we got like an audition, and then finally that went so well that a group of our business leaders went out and bought the Seattle Sonics and relocated them here in 2008, and they became the Thunder. But what we knew throughout that process and why we were so motivated to succeed was that in American life, having a major league professional sports team is sort of your ticket to the upper tier of American cities, especially if you're kind of a bubble city like we are, right? So I
right,
love talking about how we're the 20th largest city, and that is absolutely true. But that is a ranking of how many people live in your city limits. To a
right,
sports league and to most businesses, what matters is how many people live in your metro. And when you rank metros, we're 42nd. Well, every sports league has about 30 teams. So obviously, if the free market were allowed to dictate where the teams are, we're not going to have one. We're 42nd. We're not
right.
in the top 30 markets. So we need that very badly to sort of have that calling card, to have that identity, and to have that seat at the table among America's top tier cities. And so that's what the Thunder has meant to us. And so when people argue about whether, who should pay for arenas and stadiums and whether they're worth it, they often lose sight of the fact that not every city is coming to that conversation in the same place. All right, like New York is New York, LA is LA. They don't need sports teams, and they're going to have them anyways because the market is so big. It's a great business model for sports teams to be in those cities. But in a place like Oklahoma City, we need this. Like this has like added rocket fuel to our momentum over the last 15 years. And we don't want to lose that identity. We build so many other things about our identity on top of that brand that we have an NBA team. So yeah, it's been really critical to us. And fortunately, our residents totally understood that. So when we reached that inflection point where it was like we either build a new arena or we contemplate a future without the NBA because it's just the reality of the business of sports. Our vote
Right.
rose to the occasion. 71% passed $1 billion tax to build that new arena and to secure a commitment from the Thunder to be here for basically 30 more years. Those don't pass in other cities. Your viewers know that. Like it just failed in Arizona, and that hockey team is moving. It just failed in
Yeah.
Kansas City, and we don't know the future of the Royals and the Chiefs. But here in Oklahoma City, we we did a slam dunk, and we're going to have that team for another generation as a result. But we understand how important it is to our city, and that is uniquely true in Oklahoma City.
Long-winded advocate to your detriment, because what I was going to do is to wax philosophical about 40 years in the business and never seen anything come close to 71%. I don't care where it is, especially if it's a $900 million public investment. Then it's a little complicated to people that don't understand how to explain. It's the 70 million kind of link to Maps 4 and how the structure worked. And then you brought in Maps as a brand, but this is not Maps. It was genius for those of us who remember how you built it. And also the fact that you work in tandem with Clay Bennett, an incredible ownership group, because not only did you get it done, as you said in the last minute there, you're basically guaranteeing that that team doesn't leave. That team is part effectively of your real estate, of your assets. You can't pick it up because of the lease you're doing and did, and that's incredible too.
Yeah, yeah, they're obviously great partners, and they live here. They care about Oklahoma City's future. But I always have to remind people. I mean, they are businessmen as well. I mean, this isn't totally a philanthropic endeavor. I mean, like
Right.
they can't lose their shirts over this deal, and it is really hard to have a major league sports team in Oklahoma City when you're the 42nd largest market. It's not as easy as it is to have a sports team, and it's not as and by easy I mean it's not as financially rewarding as having a sports team perhaps in LA and New York. So we kind of do have to meet them in the middle a little bit to make this work for everybody. But it is, yeah, that whole discussion was a great partnership, and yeah, they are committed now. They needed obviously the facilities, they needed that commitment from the people of Oklahoma City, but they are making a mutual commitment. And yeah, this team is here for another generation. Nothing's forever. And it's important, perhaps,
Yeah.
for people in my role to always set that expectation. I mean, somebody's going to have to worry about this when that lease runs out 30 years from now. But that's a pretty good commitment, and it certainly secures it, for another generation. And my kids, George and Maggie, will get to enjoy the Thunder for decades to come. And that was really, really important to our city's momentum.
And by the way, note to George and Maggie. Most mayors, especially our friend Ron Norick, you're up there, but not a senior status. But when you say, 30 years from now, you are going to be around because you're going to be 75, and they're going to watch you put up the yard signs for Maps 9. It's going to be really fun, and I'm going to be right there with you in spirit. Probably not around, but in spirit. So, what's your message to? And you already said it. But the sense is there is a special obligation for mid-market communities to not only support their team with public private partnership, but also the way the lease is configured to allow the team room to breathe. And it's not just the Hurricanes and the Blue Jackets in hockey, Columbus and Carolina. Memphis has just gone through that with an out-of-town owner, even though in-town guys like FedEx, and they always look to Oklahoma City, for example. So what do you say to those cities?
Well, look, it's not even really, people want to frame it sometimes as like what's right or what's moral or, what's
Right.
fair. And, I mean, all that's well and good. But to me, it's like, what's reality? I mean, what are people going to
Yeah.
do in your city? If you have someone who is financially capable of and willing to do maybe more than people ownership groups would typically do in a smaller market, then great. But like more realistically, you're probably going to be dealing with somebody who is running a business and has maybe already made a conscious choice to be in a smaller market and is at peace with that, but also has certain limitations based on the fact that you're just offering a lesser financial proposition being in a smaller market. So I guess what I always would tell people in Oklahoma City during this conversation about an arena, and I think it would be translatable to other smaller markets, is you're going to have residents who say, well, they should do this or they should do that, and we shouldn't have to build an arena. And it doesn't really matter woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, like, you have to face the reality of the situation. What's going to happen, and how are we going to react? And so in Oklahoma
Yeah.
City's case, look, we're the 42nd largest market. Nobody's really ever built an arena in a market this small with private sector dollars. If markets
Right.
this size want to have that quality of life amenity and that economic impact, they have to build them. And by the way, this is the fourth publicly funded arena that we've built. And in this case, the Thunder are contributing $50 million, which is $50 million more than we've ever received before for any of those previous three arenas. So we're doing what small market teams do. And I would say the same thing to other small markets and medium-sized markets is like, look, you got to face reality. And if you're the mayor, you got to tell the truth to your voters about that reality. And then they can make the decision if it's worth it or not. Obviously in Oklahoma City, we've
Yeah.
seen the value and we know it's worth it. But it's a choice. And I'm glad actually in Oklahoma City, we get to vote on it. So it's like, the voters decided, and that's ultimately the best test of all.
Man, I am ready to vote. Oh, wait, the election's already over and I don't live there. All right, no, yeah, and quite clearly, you don't need my vote. Moving on. Here is a historical question, and you may remember it. Uh, October 8, 2008, Billings, Montana. Why is that important?
October 8th, 2008. Well, is that the first exhibition game for the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Wow, how about that, my friend? You win 4 more years in office after 2026. You lose to the Timberwolves. You're 29 years old. Obviously, you're following it. And then November 2 is your first game. I'm not sure about the ownership's patience. We'll just leave that alone. But poor PJ Carlissimo, he lasts 10 games.
Yeah.
He's fired. By the way, my Heat thing, we lost 19 games with Ron Rothstein, and he got the axe too. So that's the nature of what happens. And your deal, as you remember, for the people who are out there listening, in 2008. Clay Bennett buys the Sonics, and the league brokers the opportunity to move after Clay really did try in Seattle, and Seattle keeps the name, the likeness, the logo. but they don't keep Kevin Durant, do they? They don't keep Kevin Durant. And so you're moving in. Pride, thinking of what's going on. You're sitting at the first game. What goes through your mind?
Oh gosh, yeah, and I was there opening night,
Yeah, of course you were.
2008. At that moment in time, I mean, the most important thing to Oklahoma City was that we were in the game now, and of course, David Stern was there that night. I was working for I was the chief of staff to the mayor, so I
Yeah,
was in the bowels of the arena with Commissioner Stern and with the mayor and taking pictures when they addressed the crowd. So yeah, I mean, an amazing special night that more than offset the fact that we then got hammered by like 30 points
doesn't matter.
by the
Didn't
Bucks.
matter. By the Wolves.
I think
I
the
think.
Bucks. I'm going to say the Bucks.
Oh, the Bucks. It was the Bucks because the Wolves were your first win, not only preseason game, but your first win by the Bucks. You remember? That's, by the way, that may be the only loss in your life that you remember. Just so you
That's
know.
good
So we're
leadership
moving on.
advice. Forget the
Yeah,
losses. Yeah.
good leadership advice. So it's Westbrook, Harden, Perkins, Ibaka, Durant, Scott Brooks. You remember with pride 2011, 2012, and you win the first game against my Heat, and it's like, oh, here we go. But then you cut back from commercial, and here come four more games. But you're in the finals.
Yeah, no,
Big deal,
amazing
right? Big
experience for
awareness.
the community, and of course, we should have been the champions because the ref didn't call that foul on LeBron at the end of Game Two. That would have given us
There
a
you go.
2-0, 2-0 series lead. But and yeah, an amazing experience, obviously. But I'd have to say, like this return this year that we just experienced, and even though we only made the second round, not having playoff games in Oklahoma City for 5 years, having this kind of new iteration of the team, and also just the way they really, captured the imagination of the city. They've got such a cool relationship with us and with each other, and they're so young and they're just
Yeah.
incredibly fun to watch. I got to tell you, like the atmosphere at the games this year was absolutely on the level of that NBA Finals year, and so who knows how it's going to be as we advance in the years ahead, because we have every reason to believe with the youth of this current team that we're going to be back in the playoffs and making deep runs for years to come.
And they're not selfish, and they're good kids, and they're coached well. And it's a far cry from July 4th, 2016. I'll just do that, then we'll move on. So it's like,
I do know all these
it's like,
dates. Yeah, I'm a fan. Yeah, I
well,
know what you're talking about.
yes, you do. It's like the Kremlin, where you're taking the statue of Stalin and you're pulling it off, and everybody is taking the D and the U off of Durant's restaurant and trying to pry it off. In a small market, when a free agent decides to go somewhere else, it rocks you to the core, regardless of the ability of the ownership group to keep him. Now you moved on, but that was a jolt, short-term
Well, yeah,
jolt,
I mean,
right?
it hurt everybody. Like I mean, fan is short for fanatic, right? I mean, like, this is
Yeah,
a very
that's right.
emotional thing, and that was, also that wasn't like we'd been at this for 50 years. I mean, we'd been at this at that moment in time for 8 years, and we had such a I mean, it felt like a marriage. I mean, that's what it felt like to people. It felt like your spouse had just, served you with divorce papers. I mean, it was that
Yeah.
hurtful, I think, to the community. And that's why there was such this sort of outpouring of pain that lasted really for years. And some people still kind of, carry that. But, I've often thought there's so much history that is tied up between Oklahoma City and KD. It's like, at some point, I hope we can find peace with that so we can enjoy our own history, because it's kind of impossible to enjoy it with him being cut out of the pictures because he's right in the center of them all, So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a tough deal. But the team, like, to remind you, I mean, the next year became one of our favorite seasons with Russell's triple double
That's right.
average and run to the MVP, and then the next year after that, the trading for Paul George. It was a lot of fun stuff that followed. It didn't equate to the kind of playoff runs that we had enjoyed before, but it was sure a lot of fun. And ultimately, like I try to remind people, that's what this is all about. Are you having fun in the moment? That's what this is for. So
Yeah,
I thought we
yeah,
had a lot
and
of
and and
fun
I
underneath
and
it
and I and
all.
I, I guarantee you when that comes when you raise the banner for your NBA championship, and then you do with Clay a drum roll of all the people that honored and KD and Westbrook and Ibaka and Harden and everybody come back, and you're part of that deal, and I'll be there and I'll sell tickets. That'll be perfect. I've already got a picture. Let's segue for a couple of minutes on other things. U.S. Conference of Mayors incoming. Obviously, the whole idea of sports and entertainment. There is a sports committee that Buddy Dyer chairs, and otherwise, it's a great world for you, but it's not just sports, it's economic development and everything else. Excited about that role?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, greatly honored to have such an active role in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I mean, it's a very bipartisan slash nonpartisan organization.
Yeah.
Republican mayors and Democratic mayors, we work closely together. We stand shoulder to shoulder on the issues that are important to people in our cities, and most Americans, and most economic activity is happening in America's cities. And so, actually, my predecessor, Mick Cornett, was the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I was very involved when I was his chief of staff. So I always loved the organization. And so when I became mayor myself, I jumped right in. And yeah, I'll be president beginning in June of 25, and I'll serve in that role for a year. And it's a great platform for Oklahoma City. It puts you in a lot of important rooms, and it makes you a key participant in all kinds of conversations, as you just alluded to. So yeah, I love the organization, and it's a lot of fun, and we talk about everything from sports to infrastructure, and it's great.
Yeah, and it's a trade show for doing good, basically,
Yeah.
is the way I would kind of describe it. All right, couple more. So, um, the immigration bill with Senator Langford, the rally at COVID. I'm not mentioning it because of anything other than this is a divisive time in the world, in a red state that is as important as any other. How do you personally stay above the fray?
Well, I've been at this a long time, so I've had a lot of time to observe how things should be done, in my opinion. And you're right. I mean, the national political dynamic is such that it incentivizes people to pull us apart. But here in Oklahoma City, we're very purple. I mean, we're a pretty good microcosm of the United
Yeah.
States. Where our demographics kind of match the United States, and our 50-50 split between Republicans and Democrats kind of matches the United States. It is true that Oklahoma is very red, but Oklahoma City is not. So holding all that together would be impossible if your approach was divisive, or you tried to dominate, with one side or the other. There's not enough of either side to dominate the other. We got to work together if we're going to get anything done. So when I ran for mayor, I really embraced what I thought was our unique political culture. I embraced the way that we elect mayors. This is a key thing. I mean, like the fact that most mayors are elected through a system where all the voters see all the candidates, and all the candidates have to face all the voters, i.e., we don't go through closed partisan primaries. That's how you get statesman-like unifying leadership. Well,
Yeah.
I embraced all of those things, and I'm wearing a pin here. You probably can't read it, but it says One OKC. And I've always projected that ethos that we're gonna incorporate, all the views of all the communities within our city into the final narrative and the final outcome that we pursue. And I've kept that going for 6 years, and it seems to be serving us well. And I certainly think it's something that the state and the country would do well to emulate. I'm not saying that anybody's rushing to do it, but they should be, because I think in Oklahoma City we're proving its effectiveness.
Certainly do, certainly does. Just a couple more. A lot of people don't know about your Osage heritage. Talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Osage Nation. I'm the city's first Native American mayor. And obviously, this is a state with 39 tribes, a lot of Native American history. This is, where the federal government pushed a lot of the tribes, against their will back in the 1800s. So, I've tried as mayor to really continue to build that relationship and really assert Oklahoma City as a place that I think should be and could be and can be a national capital for Native and Indigenous people. And I was honored it was a 20-year journey. So, I mean, it wasn't my initiative, but I was always been very supportive of what is now the First Americans Museum. And I was honored as the city's first Native American mayor to get to cut the ribbon on that $200 million facility here that is now being surrounded by a $400 million development by the Chickasaw Nation. So we've got some really cool infrastructure in place that tells that story, and we want to continue to build upon that narrative and that relationship that we have with our tribal nations.
Time magazine named you one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Did they rank that list? Where are you on that list? And are you number one? Are you close? What's the deal?
No rankings. I think just being in the hundreds seemed pretty good. There's like a few billion people on the planet, so I'm fairly
Yeah.
well honored, ranking or no ranking. Yeah, no, that was super cool. Yeah. I mean, like, Jalen Hurts was on the list. I mean, it was a cool list and a great event. I got to go to New York and celebrate that, and it was yeah, that's very nice. And I hope most of all a nice platform for Oklahoma City. I mean, it
Yeah.
just more and more Oklahoma City, whether it's our athletes or our mayors, we're on the national stage as we should be. And I think that it's still something that we kind of pinch ourselves about because we didn't used to feel that we were on anybody's radar. But I'm so proud and thrilled for all of us that we continue to make waves as a community and as individuals on the national and international scene. We're truly evolving into a world-class city.
Last question. We're good friends. Give me something. So you're 45, you're mayor through 2026. What do you do the next 45 years? And what about national office?
Well, in the current political environment, I have 40 more years to run for president, right? So,
Yeah, that's right.
why
Well
be
put.
why be in any rush? Yeah, I'm up in 2 years. We don't have term limits. There's a lot we got going on between Maps for the arena and other major initiatives. So, yeah, I'm planning to run for reelection, and I just think being mayor of America's 20th largest city, my hometown, is a great gig, and I mean. I don't. People sometimes think that like maybe there's greener pastures, and I'm always like, look, I've been on Oprah, like I've been on Rick Horrow. I mean, what more could I
Yeah, yeah.
want? Like this is an amazing platform to be a big city mayor. So I'm in no rush. Anything else feels like a lateral move, and I am 45, so yeah, in all sincerity, maybe not 40 more years, although again, that is actually like where current American politics is. But I do think I've got a lot of time to figure out how I can continue to serve and how my what I offer can find its highest and best use. But right now, man, we got so much going on in Oklahoma City, and it's a lot of fun. And I always think like I'll never have more fun than this, so I better enjoy it.
Well, by the way, it's a great opening line to deflect that question, and I will tell you that gratuitous comments with relative to me, notwithstanding, this is one of the few gigs that is made by your predecessors, is compounded by your incredible work, and don't go anywhere. In addition to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we've got Oak Tree Golf in our future. We've got Thunder Championship games to go to. We got a whole hell of a lot to do unless you get in the way by doing something stupid. So stay where you are. Just stay where you are.
Thank you.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.
We'll talk about the opening drive as we normally do every week. The 5 top stories we saw in the last couple of weeks. Number 1, the NHL Stadium Series drew 95,000 people in the wake of the Four Nations hype. Columbus, Ohio, Blue Jackets beat the Red Wings 5-3, but that's not the story. The honoring of Johnny Gaudreau, that's part of the story. The Ohio State Marching Band and the first outdoor game that the Blue Jackets have ever played, that's part of the story. The game was broadcast in 191 countries, that's part of the story. And the bottom line is, as the Four Nations Cup, the memories are there, but what do we do next time? Well, we've got the Olympics, but we've got the Winter Classics and the Stadium Series, which continue to find new and diverse ways to move forward, thanks to Gary Bettman. That is clearly number 1 and will be for a long time. That's number 1. Number 2, IMG On Location PBR, now formerly part of TKO, as Endeavor completes the sale, transfer of ownership to IMG of its IMG Sports Agency. The licensing stays in place, but the IMG events portfolio set to remain as part of Endeavor, itself being taken private through Silver Lake. currently houses World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, and other properties. It is a big deal and will continue to get bigger. And as the industry increases its value and reach, look for companies to do the same. That's number 2. Number 3, Formula One still in talks with ESPN on a media deal. The CEO says at the Liberty Media earnings conference, the expiring exclusive window has been done, but that doesn't mean that ESPN has stopped conversations. And at the same time, Netflix, they've had, remember, the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul event, the Christmas Day games, they've had WWE Raw, Formula One, Drive to Survive. The Formula One company itself reported about a $3.6 billion revenue discussion in 2024, a 14% increase over the previous year. Fourth quarter revenue dipped to $1.17 billion from $1.23, but it's the same old plan of trying to keep the mainstream companies at bay while looking at the streaming services to prop up the rights fees. No reason why Formula One won't do the same. That's number 3. Number 4, the NCAA heading into March Madness. Everybody's talking about it even here. But the revenue, $1.4 billion during last fiscal year, the highest in at least 2 decades, represents a $91 million increase over the previous year's revenue and will continue to have that increase. The proposed settlement of the House litigation and $2.8 billion is an issue that people need to worry about. But the best outcome today is a surplus, and as long as the surplus is there, the companies, the athletic directors, everybody involved in basketball and otherwise will have an understanding of what's at stake heading into the House ruling. And Final Fours on both the men's and women's side in March Madness will go a long way to deciding what happens in the future. As number 4. Number 5, Major League Baseball reportedly in talks about how to replace ESPN. Remember, their deal consisted of opening day, Sunday night baseball, the home run derby, and the wild card series. They're looking at not only other mainstream deals, but they're also looking at Main Street Sports Group, formerly Diamond, and their FanDuel deal. They're also looking at Netflix, Fox Sports, and others. Again, same deal. Get the mainstream entities to move forward on it. Get the streamers to collateralize the increase in the bid. It's worked in other leagues, probably work in baseball. Those are the 5 that we've looked at in the past. Let's look at the 5 to watch coming up. Number 1, esports organizations scramble to form Marvel Rivals teams ahead of the surge of the game. After a late 2024 release, the Marvel-themed hero shooter has become one of the top games in the world, reached over 40 million players in the last 3 months, and at the end of February, Fnatic teased the esports community with a photo of the Thing wearing a Fnatic jersey. People in esports understand the significance of all of this. What it means is more diversity, more product equity. See what happens over time. That's number 1. Number 2, Paris Saint-Germain launches a tech accelerator, PSG Labs, out of their regional office in Doha. They'll accept applicants ranging from established companies to visionary ideas. The Parisian location will serve as headquarters for the program, with Doha serving as an outpost, the Middle East, to identify promising regional companies and potentially connect them with the home base. Do it in football, America. Do it in baseball. Obviously, PSG has the leverage and chops to do it in soccer. That's number 2. Number 3, Major League Baseball's ABS system, automated ball strike, seems to be a hit, at least in preseason games. Corbin Burns, who just signed a $210 million deal, and he should know, he said, hey, it looks pretty good. The teams can challenge the home plate umpire twice per game to review a ball or strike call. If you're wrong, you lose it. If you're right, you maintain it. And it's a player opt-out the second year. The players hold the cards. Looks like we may see some of that as we begin the season. That's number 3. Number 4, another technological advance. The NFL looks like they will adopt the Hawkeye first down system in regular season games. Media session at the NFL Combine, the league's football operations department revealed the plan. The human chains, remember them, we still have them, 75 seconds to deploy and implement, 30 seconds for Hawkeye. The NFL indicated that on-field officiating procedures would be finalized this offseason as technicians would operate the new system. NBA referees, tennis, goaltending, powering MLB's automated ball strike system. That's a Hawkeye system. And Sony, the official technology partner with the NFL, they may make this happen sooner than later, and that's number 4. And then finally, number 5, Evolve announces an official partnership with Sports Illustrated Stadium and the New York Red Bulls. The Safer Experiences, Business Solutions, Fan Experience has decided to go into the Sports Illustrated Stadium. The Major League Soccer 12th team, it includes Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, Lower.com Field in Columbus, Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, Toyota in Frisco, and others. The technologies company, quote, talks about screening and analytics to help create safer experiences for the world's most iconic venues and companies, as well as schools, hospitals, and public spaces. Its mission is to transform gateways in many places where people gather by enabling seamless technical transformation. An amazing start to what could be a tremendous couple of weeks in sports. Thank you very much to David Holt for lending his unique and ever-evolving expertise. Thanks, Callie Kazare, for putting our show together. Thank you all for watching and listening. In New Zealand, but certainly have not lost touch. What an incredible country, an incredible sports business, $1.3 trillion going forward. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.